Well, hello everyone. Welcome to our first APT rules workshop ever. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Matt Minder, CEO, co-founder of the APT. I'll be presenting tonight. Also have the USGA Advanced Rules Certification here with Matt Fegley, our competition committee chair. He'll be in the background working the Q&A. Matt, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Yep. Matt Fegley, I handle handicaps competitions. So I guess the official terminology is competition committee chairman. So I'll just be here supporting you guys through this presentation. So
Sounds good. So a couple things we'll do in the ground rules. We're going to go through about 8 different rules in depth tonight. Probably the 8 that I think are probably the most key to understand for tournament play. At the end of each one, we'll do some sort of review question or checklist to talk through it, and then we'll have time for just a couple questions at each rule. We'll keep it moving, but Matt and I will stay online at the end tonight to answer any of your questions. And so looking forward to, but we'll jump right in. We got a lot going on tonight. So the goals of this workshop, first and foremost, is just have a general knowledge of the rules. So for some of you guys that you've been playing the game for a long time, the rules have been changing quite a bit over the last 10 or so years, especially in 2023. And so some of those to come through, I think, are really, really important. And we'll just continue to go through those changes, and you'll be able to ask questions. We'll show some diagrams, all of that. The second piece is going to be to learn how to find things quickly in the rule book. I think that's always a big thing when there's a rules question. The third is learn how to address the rules situations to get to the correct answers. I know some of these things can be confusing, but most importantly, I think instill a culture of learning about the game. And so we've all been there. You know, there's all the groups where nobody knows the rules, which is all frustrating for everybody. And then there's also the groups that everybody wants to talk about the rules. It's the most confusing rule that never gets applied ever before. But the person wants you to be impressed that you know the random rule. That's not what we're talking about. That's not the purpose. This is just to have an understanding of learning the game, the culture of learning the rules as we go. So one of the big things, if you haven't done yet, that I'll highly recommend you do, we'll talk about it a lot. The USGA has a Rules of Golf app that's a free app download on your phone. It's got the rules of golf. It's got the definitions. It's got the clarifications all in the app. It's even got sections where you can put different notes under different rules. If you get there, it's a very useful tool. And so if you're playing a lot of competitive golf, that's where I would start in downloading that. You can also get, hard copies of the rule book, but that USGA Rules of Golf app, I will tell you, is really, really good. And so before we jump into everything, I do need to say that the rules and the associated diagrams that you're going to see are property of the United States Golf Association, comes straight out of their rule book. We're not going to reinvent the wheel tonight. They are used with their permission, and so we do appreciate that as we work together to make the game better for everyone. So when we jump right into the rules, before we get into any of the specific rules, the most important foundational piece of the rules, I get asked this all the time, is the definitions. So if you're new to this, I'm sure on this call, I know we had some people that have their USGA certification, which makes me nervous. So anything I misstep, they'll be ready to get me. And I'm sure some of you guys that have RSVP'd and talked to are just starting competitive golf for the first time. And so if you want to understand the rules of golf, it really starts with the definitions. There's a whole section of definitions. Knowing the definitions are the key to understanding, interpreting, and applying the rules of golf. And one thing that's key is you're reading the rules for the first time is the definitions are always displayed in italics in the rules. So we'll show that here in a minute, but I put some key definitions to know. If you scroll through those, you'll see them, but abnormal course conditions, advice, areas of the course, conditions affecting the stroke, general area, relief area, temporary water. There's a bunch in there. Good place to start. And as we'll look, I'll give you an example of a rule and show you where the definitions are. This one's a simple one, but where you see highlighted in yellow, that is a definition. In the Rules of Golf app, if you hover over that definition and click, it'll take you right to the definition. And so if you're reading a rule and don't understand it, there's usually quite a few defined terms that will give you clarity and context for the rule that you're reading. And so once you understand the definitions, it's really easy or a lot easier to get to the right answers in the rules and understand what's being said. So if you've got the printed rule book, definitions are in the back. If you're in the rules of golf app, you're just going to go to the definitions tab. So with that being said, we'll stop as we go through some of these rules and go through some of these defined terms where they're relevant. But we'll jump right into the rules. And so we're going to start in rule number 1, the game, player conduct, and the rules. A great starting point. So the game of golf is played in a round of 18 or fewer holes on a course by striking a ball with a club. Starting from the very basics. Everybody understands this piece. We'll get into the rest of it. But each hole starts with a stroke from the teeing area and ends when a ball is holed on the putting green, or when the rules otherwise say the hole is completed. For each stroke, the player plays the course as they find it and plays the ball as it lies. That's in two very important concepts. We're going to see that everything is going to build off of. They play the course as they find it, and they play the ball as it lies. It says, but there are exceptions where the rules allow the player to alter conditions on the course and require or allow the player to play the ball from a different place than where it lies. Does anybody want to give me an example of one of those exceptions?
When you
There you go. Yes, sir.
when you have two balls lying next to each other, you have to mark the ball in front so the guy behind can play, and the guy behind chunks the heck out of it and tears up your original lie.
Correct. So another example we play commonly, especially this time of year when everything's overseeded, it is preferred lies. Allows you to do so. So that's in there. Jumping right in. 1.2 standards of player conduct. This is where it gets important. Conduct expected of all players. All players are expected to play in the spirit of the game by, number 1, acting with integrity. For example, by following the rules, applying all penalties, and being honest in all aspects of play. Number 2, big one, showing consideration to others. For example, by playing at a prompt pace, looking out for the safety of others, and not distracting the play of another player. So this isn't college basketball. You know, I'm a big Illinois fan. Fegley is a big UNC fan. Golf is a game where nobody's standing behind the backboard waving at you and cheering when you miss a free throw. We play the game a different way. It's one of the things that makes golf a special game. And then the other one that's important, hopefully we don't deal with this in APT events, but it has happened. If a player plays the ball in a direction where there might be a danger of hitting someone, they should immediately shout a warning, such as the traditional warning of 4. So that's a good one. And the third is taking good care of the course. For example, by replacing divots, smoothing bunkers, repairing ball marks, and not causing unnecessary damage to the course. So what's interesting about standards of player conduct is there's no penalty under the rules for failing to act in this way, except that the committee may disqualify a player for acting contrary to the spirit of the game if it finds that the player has committed serious misconduct. So serious misconduct is player behavior that is so far removed from what is expected in golf that the most severe sanction of removing a player from the competition is justified. So penalties other than disqualification may be imposed for player misconduct only if those penalties are adopted as part of a code of conduct under Rule 1.2b. So on APT, we have a couple of those that are in place. Both of them are in the member manual. The pace of play policy is on your hard card, which is on the back of every rule sheet that you'll get in 2026. But those things are there and outlined for you. So, but if you want to know where they are in the rules, here they are. We're just starting at Rule 1. And then it also says here, a committee may set its own standards of player conduct in the code of conduct adopted as a local rule. The code may include penalties for breach of this standard, such as a 1-stroke penalty or the general penalty, which is 2 strokes. The committee may also disqualify a player for serious misconduct or failing to meet the code's standards. Just so you know, if you guys are all sitting on this call, if anybody's trying to write this furiously, I'm going to put all of this in a PDF and we're going to email it to you at the end. So feel free to pay attention and not worry about notes. You're going to get all of this stuff. And just so you know, this is almost word for word straight out of the rule book. So 1.3 is playing by the rules. This is where it starts to get good and interesting. So 1.3a is meaning of the rules, terms of the competition. The term rules means Rules 1 through 25 and the definitions in these rules of golf, and any local rules the committee adopts for the competition or the course. So where this is important for you guys to understand, local rules that you read in the back, there's a bunch of model local rules in the rule book. Not all of them are in play. It's at the option of the committee, which is myself and Mr. Fegley, the rest of our national staff, and our chapter owners. And so the back of your rule sheet has the local rules for the event. So it's important to look at those and know what those are. And then players are also responsible for complying with all terms of the competition adopted by the committee, which is entry requirements, the form and dates of play, the number of rounds, and the number and orders of holes in the rounds. For us, it also includes handicap reporting requirements, playing by the proper tee assignments, etc. So, and then applying the rules. This is where golf is unique. Number one, player responsibility for applying the rules. Players are responsible for applying the rules to themselves. So one of the things that's unique about golf is we call penalties on ourselves. So players are expected to recognize when they've breached a rule and to be honest in applying their own penalties. If a player knows that they have breached a rule that involves a penalty and deliberately fails to apply the penalty, the player is disqualified. And if two or more players agree to ignore any rule or penalty they know that applies, and any of those players have started the round, they are also disqualified, even if they have not yet acted on the agreement. So when it's necessary to decide questions of fact, a player is responsible for considering not only their own knowledge of the facts, but also all other information that is reasonably available. This comes into play a lot of times. I think, Fegley, and you can jump in here too if you want to. I see this the biggest as figuring out where did my ball last cross the margin of the hazard. And so I think it crossed here, and all three people in my group think it crossed 40 yards back. And so as a player, we're responsible for considering all relevant information, which is also what our other playing competitors see from that perspective. And then a player may ask for help with the rules from a referee or the committee, but if help is not available within a reasonable time, the player must play on and raise the issue with a referee or the committee when they become available. And that's Rule 20. We're going to go through Rule 20 in depth. So applying the rules. This is the other thing that's interesting. We see a lot of arguments. So I wanted to make sure we covered some of these basic things in 1.3. Is accepting players' reasonable judgment in determining a location when applying the rules. So this is key. So many rules require a player to determine a spot, point, line, edge, area, or other location under the rules, such as estimating where a ball last crossed the edge of a penalty area, estimating or measuring when dropping or placing a ball and taking relief, replacing a ball in its original spot, whether the spot is known or estimated, determining the area of the course where the ball lies, including whether the ball lies on the course, or determining whether the ball touches or is in or on an abnormal course condition. Such determinations about location need to be made promptly and with care, but often cannot be precise. So here's where it becomes interesting in the rules. This is a change in 23. So as long as the player does what can be reasonably expected under the circumstances to make an accurate determination, the player's reasonable judgment will be accepted, even if after the stroke is made, the determination is shown to be wrong by video evidence or other information. And so essentially, as long as you're doing what can be reasonably expected and you're acting in good faith to apply the rules properly, that judgment is going to stand. And then if a player becomes aware of a wrong determination before the stroke is made, it must be corrected. Another big piece there. And then penalties, which is why we're spending some time covering Rule 1. So actions giving rise to penalties. A penalty applies when a breach of a rule results from a player's own actions or the actions of their caddy. Penalty also applies when, this one's really interesting, I think, another person takes an action that would breach the rules if taken by the player or caddy, and that person does so at the player's request or while acting with the player's authority. Or here's the big one. The player sees another person about to take an action concerning the player's ball or equipment. that they know would breach the rules if taken by the player or caddy and does not take reasonable steps to object or stop it from happening. So this is one of those things in the spirit of the game here. If you see somebody, I'm thinking a big example, Fegley, is tee markers. If you see somebody about to tee off from the wrong tee or in front of the tee markers, try to stop them. That's what the rules and the integrity of the game requires. And so there's nothing worse than the guy that says, "Hey, I watched him tee off in front of the tee markers on hole 3 and doesn't say anything until scoring." Like, that is actually against the rules. So don't be that guy. Anything you want to add to that, Fegs, before we move on?
No, I think you covered it. Again, just to reiterate the T thing, as well as if a player is going to take an action that, that you clearly know is wrong. So just be okay with speaking up.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I had somebody text me trying to get in. So penalties. So levels of penalties. And so one of the big things about penalties in golf, as you think about it, penalties are meant to cancel out any potential advantage to the player. So the 3 main penalty levels. First is a 1-stroke penalty, and this penalty applies in both match play and stroke play. Under certain rules, where either A, the potential advantage from a breach is minor, or B, a player takes penalty relief by playing a ball from a different place than where the original ball lies. The second and the most common penalty is called the general penalty, which in match play is a loss of hole penalty. In stroke play, it is a 2-stroke penalty. And this penalty applies for a breach of most rules where the potential advantage is more significant than where only one penalty stroke applies. And then the last, and we'll talk about this more in depth, is disqualification, and that's in both match play and stroke play. A player may be disqualified from the competition for certain actions or rule breaches involving serious misconduct, which we talked about in 1.2, or where the potential advantage is too significant for the player's score to be considered valid. And now as we go later on into this, we're going to talk about maximum score, which on the APT we've known in the past as triple bogey max. And maximum score actually allows a lot of those penalties to become maximum score instead of disqualification. And we'll talk through that later. And that's one of the main reasons that we have maximum score for divisions 3 through 5. And then there's no discretion to vary penalties. I know we get this all the time when we have to apply penalties. Penalties need to be applied only as provided in the rules. So neither a player nor the committee has authority to apply penalties in a different way. And a wrong application of a penalty or failure to apply a penalty may stand only if it is too late to correct it. And Rule 20 that we'll go through will cover all of that. And then the fun part of Rule 1 is talking about applying penalties to multiple breaches of the rule. This is where it gets interesting. So we're going to talk about it. Hopefully, none of us have ever been in this situation, but it is in the rules, and so we're going to cover it. One of the most interesting pieces of Rule 1, whether a player gets multiple penalties for breaching multiple rules or the same rule multiple times depends on whether there has been an intervening event and what the player did. And so when there's multiple breaches of the rule, the question of how to apply penalties comes down to if there's an intervening event. And so the purposes of this rule, there are only 2 intervening events. One is the completion of a stroke, and second is being aware or becoming aware of a breach of a rule. And this includes when a player knows they breached a rule, when the player is told of a breach, or when the player is uncertain whether or not they have breached a rule. So those are all the intervening events.
Oh,
And
hey,
so,
Matt, we've got something in the questions here
sure.
that does kind of relate to this. So what we've got, Cassidy Jackson asks, if one player has teed off from the wrong tee and the entire group wasn't aware we were teeing off from the wrong tee until, somebody mentioned it to them, do we fix it and tee off from the correct tees even after someone has already teed off from that tee? And that comes into this
Yes.
situation where there's an intervening event, so fix the problem.
So well, teeing off from a wrong tee, technically you haven't started the hole. So in divisions 1 and 2, if you don't correct it, it would lead to disqualification before teeing off the next hole. In divisions 3 through 5, we have maximum score. So if you didn't correct it, everyone would get the maximum score, which is triple bogey. Anytime you figure out rules, an intervening event isn't one person to another person. An intervening event is me teeing off from the wrong tee. It has nothing to do. It's between two players. We'll get into some examples of that coming up. So we'll keep going. And there's actually a really good question. Our review question is about this. So, but in penalties are applied as follows. Single penalty applied for multiple breaches between intervening events. If a player breaches multiple rules or the same rule multiple times between intervening events, the player gets only one penalty. So if the rules breach have different penalties, the player only gets the higher level penalty. So there's a few of these, like for example, one of the good ones is in a bunker, right? So you're in there and I'm taking practice swings in the sand, and I don't know that I can't take practice swings in the sand, and I'm just chopping sand out of the bunker 3-4 times. But I don't know. And then you come up to me and say, hey, Matt, you're not allowed to take practice swings in the sand. Do I get 8 shots for 4 different practice swings in the sand, or do I get 1 penalty? I get 1 penalty there. However, if I take a practice swing in the sand, and Matt comes up to me and says, hey, Matt, you're not allowed to take a practice swing in the sand, and then I go do it again, that's when I'm going to get the second penalty. So that's what we're talking about here. So multiple penalties apply for breaches before and after intervening events. If a player breaches a rule and then breaches the same rule or another rule after an intervening event, the player gets multiple penalties. And so there's an exception here, and that's failure to replace a moved ball. So, for example, I'm taking a practice swing in the fairway. I move my ball. I fail to replace it, which would have been a 1-shot penalty if I did. I go ahead and hit it. I'm not going to get 1 shot plus 2 for playing from a wrong spot. I'm just going to get the general penalty. And that's all laid out in Rule 14.7a. That's the big exception to this. And the last part of this intervening event, but any penalty strokes a player gets for taking penalty relief, which we'll talk about in Rules 17, 18, and 19, which is penalty area, stroke and distance, and unplayable balls are always applied in addition to any other penalties. So that's the intervening event. It's one of the most interesting things in Rule 1. So here's the review question. And we'll let people kind of vote here in the chat as we go. In stroke play, in which of the following does player A get 2 separate penalties? So A is player A makes a stroke from the putting green that hits player B's ball at rest on the putting green. Player A then lifts their ball at rest without marking it and replaces it. At this point, A realizes their actions are penalties. B, player A takes a practice swing in the fairway that accidentally causes their ball to move, and player B informs them of the penalty stroke. Player A does not replace the ball and plays it from the new location. C, player A, without first marking the ball, lifts it to determine if it is their ball, and player B informs them of the penalty stroke for not marking their ball. Player A then cleans the ball entirely, confirms it is their ball, and replaces it on the original spot. And then D, in taking relief from ground under repair, player A mistakenly drops the ball outside of the relief area. Before playing the ball, they press down some grass behind the ball, which improves their lie and then makes a stroke. So, Fegley, what are you seeing in the chat for the answer? What's the leading answer here?
We have 1 vote for C.
We have 1 vote for C.
All right, we got B, 2 B's, 2 C's, 3 B's, or 3 C's.
Okay, we'll jump in and we'll go through each one so you can see. The correct answer is C. So, the reason is, and Fraser's saying it's not, but unfortunately this is straight from the USGA practice test. So it definitely is correct, I promise. In A, there's no intervening event. So there's 2 penalties there. First penalty is hits another ball at rest on the putting green and then lifts their ball without marking. There's 2 penalties there, but there's no intervening event. B is the exception we outlined in 9.4. And so that's the exception. C is without marking the ball, he lifted it to determine if it's their ball. They're required to mark in that case. That would be a penalty. The intervening event is when player B informs them of the penalty stroke. They then clean the ball entirely, which once again, you're not allowed to do when lifting it to identify it. You're allowed to only clean it, once again, getting into the weeds of the USGA rules, but you're only allowed to clean it enough to identify it, not the entire ball. That's the second penalty. That's why it's C. So, like I said, Mr. Frazier, we can talk about it later. I will show it to you in the rule book, but we're not covering it tonight. So, and then D, there's no intervening event. So, moving in, we have time for 2 questions before we move on, Mr. Fegley.
All right, so questions. We already covered the first question. Tony asked about, does that apply to ball marks moving? So I want some clarification on that question.
He's asking.
Other than that, we're pretty clean.
That came through when we were talking about responsibility to tell somebody that they're about to break a rule. So anytime that you see somebody violating a rule, you should do anything reasonable you can to stop it before it happens.
Yeah.
So the whole purpose of it behind is not to
You make them stop. Then it's like
Yeah.
saying,
correct. Whoever said that in the chat, you make them stop if you can, instead of wait to catch them to call a penalty on them. So the goal is to make sure the rule doesn't get broken.
All right, so we do have a hand raised.
Yep, Scott, go ahead.
Yep, go for it. Unmute yourself and go for it.
You were muted, my friend. Hold on. Oh, I don't know what I just did.
Sorry. Yeah,
That's all right.
feeding the dogs and everything else at the same time. On that whole line of discussion, the point of if you point out, if any of you agrees to disobey a rule, that's another aspect of that whole thing, right?
Correct.
And you didn't touch on that, but that's one of those that kind of falls right into that category, I believe.
Yeah, no, I believe he had it. Was that earlier, Matt, on one of the slides? I think you had something.
Well,
about
you
Yes,
said
that
if you
is
don't.
correct.
Sorry,
If
go ahead.
no, I just said if 2 people agree to not apply a rule, the penalty is disqualification. And so the rules
Right.
require you to call
Okay,
penalties
sorry.
on yourself and to apply the rules how they are in the rule book. So so thank you for that. So let's jump into rule 2. This is where it starts to get fun, talking about how to actually, nobody wants to talk about the penalties in the rules, but the penalties are what happens when we break the rules. So we'll jump right into rule 2, which is where it gets fun and terminology changes. But I think we're going to get some understanding. So is there anything you want to add before we jump into that?
I think we do have one more good question here. And this is the point of it, right? What is the penalty for not telling them to stop?
That's the fun part of it depends on how serious the breach, and it's covered under code of conduct. So
Got it.
That's where the committee has to make a decision. So depending on the
It can be,
seriousness.
so it's 1, 2, or disqualification,
Correct.
depending on okay. It's
So-
depending upon circumstances.
So jumping into rule number 2, the course boundaries and out of bounds. So golf is played on a course whose boundaries are set by the committee. Areas not on the course are out of bounds. So super simple. And then defined areas of the course. This is really important as you start to apply the rules. So there are 5 areas of course. First is the general area. And the general area covers the entire course, except for the 4 specific areas of this course described in Rule 2.2b. It's called the general area because it covers most of the course and is where a player's ball will most often be played until the ball reaches the putting green. And it includes every type of ground and growing or attached objects found in that area, such as fairway, rough, and trees. Anything you want to bring in on the general area? Fegley?
Um,
It used to
No,
be through
I
the
mean-
green. Now it's just the general
Right.
area.
I mean, that is the whole thing, right? To just remember it's the general area. It's everything except for the other four specific areas mentioned.
Yep.
So
So we'll jump in. Here are the 4 specific areas. What's important about this is certain rules apply specifically to the 4 areas of the course that are not in the general area. So one is the teeing area the player must use in starting the hole they are playing, all penalty areas, all bunkers, and the putting green of the hole the player is playing. So those are the 4 defined areas. And this one's really important, determining area of course where ball lies. So the area of the course where a player's ball lies affects the rules that apply in playing the ball or taking relief. So a ball is always treated as lying in only one area of the course. If part of the ball is in both the general area and one of the 4 specific areas of the course, it is treated as lying in that specific area of the course. And so if a ball is half on the putting green and half on the fringe, the ball is deemed to be on the putting green. If it's half in the sand and the bunker and sand in the bunker and half out of the sand in the bunker, the ball is treated to be lying in the bunker. And then if part of the ball is in 2 specific areas of the course, it is treated as lying in the specific area that comes first in this order: penalty area, bunker, and then putting green. So when it comes to what you can do in the rules, this is important to know from least restrictive to the most restrictive. So teeing area is kind of the wild, wild west. You can pretty much do within reason almost anything you want. Then it goes to the putting green, the general area, bunkers, and then the most restrictive is penalty areas. And so as you're learning the rules, this is something that's really important. You're going to ask when you get a ruling. When we get rulings as officials, the first question we ask, is it stroke play or match play? And then the second question and most important question is, what area of the course is the ball in? Because the rules apply differently based on what area of the course the ball is in. So, but least restrictive to most restrictive, that's important to know. And then 2.3, objects or conditions that can interfere with play. Certain rules may give free relief from interference by certain defined objects or conditions, such as loose impediments, movable obstructions, and abnormal course conditions, which are animal holes, ground under repair, immovable obstructions, and temporary water. But there is no free relief from boundary objects or integral objects that interfere with play. So we get into it, we'll talk some more about that. The other one that's big and relatively new is the no play zones. And as we were talking through this, I was thinking about some examples that we can talk about no play zones that exist or will exist in the future. So no play zone is a defined part of an abnormal course condition or penalty area where play is not allowed. So a player must take relief when their ball is in a no play zone, or a no play zone interferes with their area of intended stance or area of intended swing in playing a ball outside of the no play zone. So one of those things, if we talk about examples of no play zones, Fegley, I'm going to put you on the spot to see if you can think about it. Have you been to Macklemore yet?
no,
Okay. So we'll have several no play zones at Macklemore, and it's called the Mountain Cliffs, right? Some of the areas of the golf course, they're marked red, but if you get more than two steps into it, you fall down 2,500 feet. So we're going to mark those as no play zones, meaning if your ball's in it, you have to take relief out of it, because the entire penalty area is going to be a no play zone. But it also means if your ball is within, say, 2 feet of the line, but you can't take your stance without playing in it, then you would get free relief away from the no play zone until stance and swing wasn't impeded. And so that's really important to understand this terminology, especially for guys that have been playing for years and years and years. No play zone is a relatively new term, but definitely important.
And one quick thing on that, depending on
Yes.
the type of no play zone, it could be a one stroke mandatory relief or free relief. It can be one or the
Yes.
other.
And it depends on where your ball is. If your ball's in the
Right.
no play zone, relief is with penalty. unless it's a normal course condition, right? If it's a normal course condition, it can be free relief. If it's a penalty area, it's penalty relief. So, but review when considering what rules will apply, what are foundational questions, what form of play we talked about, and what area of the course my ball is in, and the 5 areas of the golf course. Again, real quick from a review standpoint is the general area, the teeing area, putting green of the hole being played, bunkers, and penalty areas. Everything in the rules builds off of these 2 rules to get started. And so I think it's really important to spend some time going through. So review question rule 2, we'll vote in the chat. In which one of the following is the ball at rest in the general area? Fegley, why don't you read the responses and let people vote?
Okay. A, the ball is touching a red penalty area line and rough in the general area. The ball is touching a white out of bounds line and rough in the general area. The ball is touching sand in a bunker and rough in the general area. The ball is touching the putting green and the fairway cut surrounding the putting green. Okay.
D.
Let's see what we got. BBBAC CAD. This is interesting.
There are a lot of votes here.
There are yes. There are a lot.
The correct
Okay.
answer is B. And you can see why in each. The ball is touching, so out of bounds line. We'll talk about this in Rule 18. The line itself is out of bounds, but part of the ball is in the rough, which is part of the general area. So if any part of it is in, it is in. So it's in the general area. And A, the ball's in the penalty area because it's touching the red penalty area. It's touching a defined area of the course. Same thing in C, and same thing in D. And so if it's touching a defined area of the course, it's in that defined area. B, it is touching out of bounds, which is not a defined area of the course, which means any of it's in the general area. That's why the answer is B. So important. We'll talk through this more. Before we jump, we're going to jump around to Rule 8 next. Do you have any questions, Fegley, that you want to address quickly before we move on?
Let's go back up to the top.
The penalty area.
So
I see
we've
Tim
got-
talked about the cemetery at Sequoia being a no-play zone. That's a really good example as well.
Yep.
So
those of you that have played there. Do we want to briefly touch on red? I don't know if we want to touch on the red or white
So
line
we'll
thing.
actually just stay tuned, Denny. We're going to get through all that because we're going to talk
Yep.
about out of bounds and penalty areas coming
in a
up
minute. So
pretty quick.
other than that, no other questions out there. So that's it.
Perfect. So Rule 8, this is where it starts to get fun with playing the golf ball. Rule 8, course played, it is found. And so big terminology in this, you'll hear us talk about a lot. The abbreviations for it is CATS. So conditions affecting the stroke. This is the area that you're not allowed to improve when you're playing. This is important. So support the principle of play the course as you find it. This rule restricts what a player may do to improve any of these protected conditions affecting the stroke, CATS. And that's anywhere on or off the golf course for the next stroke the player will make. And so conditions affecting stroke are the lie of the player's ball at rest, the area of the player's intended stance, the area of the player's intended swing, the player's line of play, and the relief area where the player will drop or place a ball. So those are the protected areas that you're restricted in what you can do. And so important here, I thought, was to go to a definition, line of play. This is one that gets confused a lot. The line where the player intends their ball to go after a stroke, including the area on the line that is a reasonable distance up above the ground and on either side of that line. And the line of play is not necessarily a straight line between 2 points. For example, maybe a curved line based on where the player intends the ball to go. The best way to explain that is if I'm hitting a wedge shot in to a hole and Scotty Scheffler is hitting a wedge shot into the hole, our line of play is probably going to be different. I'm going to be aiming at the hole, trying to carry it as close as possible, and it's just going to stop Scotty Scheffler's line of play maybe 20 feet behind the hole because he wants to land it there and spin it back. It's not necessarily just your ball to the hole in a straight line. It's how you want to play the shot that would determine the line of play. So that's important to know from that piece. So as far as Rule 8, it applies to actions taken both during a round and while play is stopped. It does not apply to the removal of loose impediments or movable obstructions, which is allowed to the extent provided in Rule 15, or an action taken while a player's ball is in motion, which is covered by Rule 11. So actions that, sorry guys, actions that are not allowed. So except in the limited ways allowed in the rules 8.1 B, C, and D, a player must not take any of these actions if they improve the conditions affecting the stroke. So you're not allowed to move, bend, or break any growing or attached natural object, immovable obstruction, integral object, or boundary object, or tee marker for the teeing area when playing a ball from that teeing area. You're not allowed to move a loose impediment or movable obstruction into position, such as to build a stance or improve the line of play, or alter the surface of the ground, including by replacing divots in a divot hole, removing or pressing down divots that have already been replaced or other cut turf that is already in place, or creating or eliminating holes, indentations, or uneven surfaces, remove or press down sand or loose soil, and remove dew, frost, or water. So penalty for breach of this rule is 8.1, the general penalty. So getting to 8.1b is actions that are allowed. This is important to know. In preparing for or making a stroke, a player may take any of these actions, and there is no penalty, even if doing so improves the conditions affecting the stroke. Fairly search for their ball by taking reasonable action to find it and identify it. Take reasonable actions to remove loose impediments and movable obstructions. Take reasonable actions to mark the spot of the ball and lift and replace the ball. And then ground the club lightly right in front or right behind the ball. Ground lightly means allowing the weight of the club to be supported by the grass, soil, sand, or other material on or above the ground surface. But it does not allow to press the club into the ground, or when ball in the bunker is in a bunker, you can't touch the sand right in front or right behind the ball. You could firmly place the feet in taking a stance, including a reasonable amount of digging in with the feet in sand or loose soil. Fairly take a stance by taking reasonable actions to get to the ball and take a stance. But when doing so, the player is not entitled to a normal stance or swing and must use the least intrusive course of action to deal with a particular situation. And make a stroke or backswing for a stroke that is then made, but when the ball is in a bunker, touching the sand in the bunker and taking the backswing is not allowed. A couple things here just to briefly summarize. Matt, what is the most common word in this rule?
Most common word.
I'll give you a hint. Take
Fairly.
reasonable
Reasonable
actions. So this is one of those things we run into it all the time. Reasonable actions are what you would normally do inside the rules. Reasonable actions aren't trying to take advantage to remove, an impediment to what you're trying to do and taking your stance. And so what talks about making sure what you're doing is reasonable. And then like when you're fairly taking your stance, you have to use the least intrusive course of action to deal with a particular situation. So you're allowed to take your stance and you're entitled to take your stance, but you're not allowed to take your stance in the most harshest way possible to remove the problem. And so you have to take your stance reasonably and least intrusive as possible. So in actions that are allowed continued in the teeing area, you're allowed to place a tee in or on the ground. In the teeing area, you can pretty much do whatever you want for the most part. You can move, bend, or break any growing or attached natural object, and you can alter the surface of the ground remove or press down sand or soil, or remove dew, frost, or water. So that's where the teeing area is the Wild Wild West. You can do more in the teeing area than anywhere else. In a bunker, you can smooth sand to care for the course after a ball played from the bunker is outside the bunker. That means rake the bunker after you leave. Everyone would do much better to do that in the putting green. You also can remove sand and loose soil and repair damage. And then you can also move a natural object to see if it is loose. But if it's not loose and it's found to be growing or attached, you have to return as nearly as possible to its original position. So 8.1 also allows you to avoid penalty by restoring conditions improved in breach of a 1 or 2, which if we go back to 1 or 2 is find this here. Trying to find it. I will pull up that. Oh, I'm losing my brain here. If you found to improve your conditions affecting the stroke by moving, bending, or breaking an object in breach of 8.1a, or moving an object into position, the definition improve is to alter one or more of the conditions affecting the stroke, other physical conditions affecting play, so you gain an advantage. And there's no penalty if before you make the next stroke, you can eliminate that improvement by restoring the original conditions in ways that are allowed. But if you improve conditions affecting the stroke in any of the other ways, in 3 through 5, you get a penalty regardless. So you do have some chances. Here's the checklist to see if you violated Rule 8.1. Did you do something that was prohibited, that was listed in the rule? Is it part of your CATs, which is conditions affecting the stroke? Lie, stance, swing, line of play. And were the conditions improved? If all 3 of those are yes, you're in violation of Rule 8.1. Anything you want to add to that, Mr. Fegley?
I think you've covered it. We do have some reasonable questions going through here that we probably should address. And a comment Nathan brought up, the biggest breach on 8.1 is knocking down weeds or moving branches that are not detached. That was kind of discussed in there, and that is the one thing that you see people, it is a common occurrence that you see. So just be aware of that piece of it. Okay. Okay. If your ball is in the desert, Denny. Okay, super important. If your ball is in the desert, so it looks like you cannot move a rock that does not touch the ball but would hit during your swing in the penalty area. Gonna need some clarification on that one. Like, is it embedded rock? Is it a loose impediment? If it's a loose impediment and the rock is free and not embedded,
Well, the rock isn't a loose impediment by actually.
depends.
We're going to cover that in Rule 17.
Okay,
I'm looking it up, but
I got you.
ask the next question while
okay.
I'm looking this up.
What is the size of the area that you cannot touch/improve around the ball? Is there a specific measurable size defined, or is it more of a rule of thumb where you know it if it improves your lie or not? I think that goes back to what we're talking about here. You've got to go through the process, right? Does it affect it, and was it improved?
So the area of intended swing says includes the entire area that might reasonably affect any part of the backswing, the downswing, or the completion of the swing for the intended stroke.
Okay.
So there's your definition.
And that gets into the situation of, he's talking specifically around the ball, but if you're backed into like some bushes.
But it's more than that.
Right. That's where I was going with that. The area is the area of your intended swing.
Correct. So
that,
yeah, and you're just talking about the ball. So it's the
right.
entire
He's specifically talking
backswing,
about
the
the
follow
ball,
through, and everything on the ground that could be affected. So cool. Denny, we're going to cover your next question. We get to Rule 17. That's coming up here pretty quick. So let's keep moving on to keep this going, and then we'll jump into Rule 17. So 8.2 is players' deliberate actions to alter other physical conditions to affect the player's own ball at rest or stroke to be made. When 8.2 applies, as this rule only covers a player's deliberate actions to alter other physical conditions to affect their ball at rest or stroke to be made. It doesn't apply to deliberately deflect or stop their own ball or to deliberately alter any physical conditions to affect where the ball might come to rest, which is covered in Rule 11 when ball is in motion, and alter the player's conditions affecting the stroke, which is covered by what we just covered. So prohibited actions to alter other physical conditions. Player must not deliberately take actions to alter any such other physical conditions to affect where the player's ball might go or come to rest after their next stroke or a later stroke, or where the player's ball at rest might go or come to rest if it moves before the stroke is made. For example, when the ball is on a steep slope and the player is concerned that it might roll into a bush. The exception is actions to care for the course. There's no penalty on this rule if the player alters such other physical conditions to care for the course, such as smoothing footprints in a bunker or replacing a divot in a divot hole. So one of these would be, for example, placing a bunker rake in front of a bunker where if you mess up your next shot, the ball is going to roll and stop. That would be a good example of this. Penalty of this for breach of this is the general penalty. Here's your checklist for Rule 8.2. Just wanted to cover it briefly. Was there a prohibited action taken? It's not in your conditions affecting the stroke. It's outside of that. Was it intentional? Did you intend to do it? So there's intent in 8.2. And then was the purpose to affect where the ball may go or end up? And so this is deliberate actions to ensure that you play your next shot from a better spot, essentially. So there you go. So I wanted to cover that real quick. 8.2 is not as common. Most people know better than to, put their flag stick behind the hole when they're putting and things like that. That would intentionally create a problem. But it is there, so if you need to know where it is. Rule 20, this is very important as we go in. We talked about this weekend at Kiowa a lot in the preserve the week before. This is about resolving rules issues during the round. So 20.1 covers players must avoid unreasonable delay. I know Chris is in the background of this screaming yes as he's monitoring pace of play, but they must avoid unreasonable delay. They must not unreasonably delay play when seeking help with the rules during a round. It says if a referee or the committee is not available in a reasonable time to help with a rules issue, the player must decide what to do and play on. And so what we tell Fegley people to do in this scenario is do what?
Play 2 balls.
Correct. So it says the player may protect their rights by asking for ruling in match play, which we're going to ignore for right now because that will confuse everything going on in Rule 20.
Yes.
Or by playing 2 balls in stroke play. 20.1C3, which is we'll get to. This is really important. So many arguments could be stopped in tournament play because when you have a rules disagreement, just play 2 balls. That's all you got to do. Rule 20.1b is rules issues in match play. It's completely different than stroke play. So I'm telling you it's there, but we're not going to talk about it tonight.
We're not touching that.
Correct. So in stroke play, 21.c, there's 3 things that are really important. The first is players do not have the right to decide rules issues by agreement. This is the misconception of match play, because in match play, you have that right. In stroke play, you do not. And so a group can't say, hey, we're going to do this, or we're going to give you free relief for this because our group thinks so. That's not how the rules of golf work. So there's no right to decide rules issues by agreement. If a referee or the committee is not available in a reasonable time to help with a rules issue, the players are encouraged to help each other in applying the rules, but they have no right to decide a rules issue by agreement, and any such agreement they may reach is not binding on any player, a referee, or the committee. And then the player should raise any rules issue with the committee before returning their scorecard. That's really big. When there's a rules issue out there, get clarification when you come in. This is the other one that's big in the rules. Players should protect other players in the competition. So it doesn't say must. I kind of wish it would say must, but it says players should protect players in the competition. That's keyword. And then to protect the interests of all other players, if a player knows or believes that another player has breached or might have breached the rules, and that the other player does not recognize or is ignoring this, the player should tell the other player, the player's marker, a referee, or the committee. This is the other thing that's key. This should be done. This does not say you should send the tournament director an email on Monday morning when the
Tuesday.
tournament was on Saturday, which I get 5 of a week. This should be done promptly after the player becomes aware of the issue and no later than before the other player returns their scorecard, unless it is not possible to do so. That way we can deal with everything. We can make the proper changes. And once again, if the player fails to do so, the committee may disqualify the player under Rule 1.2a if it decides that this was serious misconduct contrary to the spirit of the game. The purpose of the rules is not to play gotcha and send an email 3 days later. This is part of the reason why we have, and we'll talk about in Rule 21, which is maximum score for divisions 3 through 5, so that we can correct and learn the rules without having such a severe penalty when something doesn't get corrected. And so that's the second thing. And the third thing is all about playing 2 balls. So if you're not sure what to do, you have the right to play 2 balls. The player must decide to play 2 balls after it arises and before making their next stroke. When that happens, they're going to choose which ball they want to count if the rules allow the procedure, and they're going to announce that choice. So I'm going to play 2 balls. This is the one I think is going to count. That's step 1. If the player does not choose in time, meaning they played strokes with it, the ball played first is treated as the ball that's chosen by default. The second requirement is the player must report the facts of the situation to the committee before returning their scorecard, even if the player scores the same with both balls. If the player makes a stroke before deciding to play a second ball, the rule does not apply at all, and the score that counts is the score with the ball played before the player decided to play a second ball. But the player doesn't get a penalty for playing the second ball. And the second ball played under this rule is not the same as a provisional ball. So keep that in mind. You're playing 2 balls, they both count, and the committee makes a decision on the ruling. That's the key. And then the committee decision on score for the hole. So when the player choose 2 balls, committee decides the player score for the hole in this way. So the score with the ball chosen, whether by the player or by default, counts if the rules allow the procedure used for that ball. If the rules don't allow for that procedure, the score with the other ball played counts if the rules allow the procedure used for the other ball. Then it gets fun. If the rules don't allow the procedures, if you did it both wrong, which is really rare, the score of the ball chosen counts unless there was a serious breach in playing that ball from a wrong place, in which case the score with the other ball counts. If there's a serious breach in playing each ball from a wrong place, the player is disqualified. Unless we're in maximum score divisions 3 through 5, you just get a triple. And then all strokes with the ball that does not count the player's score for the hole. So and the rules allow the procedure used means that either the original ball was played as it lies and played was allowed from there, or the ball that was played was put in play under the right procedure in the right way and in the right place under the rules. So key points review to Rule 20 for questions. This is a really important one, especially if you're new to tournament golf and are unsure about the rules. This rule is your friend because it protects you. So key points of view: players do not have the authority to decide rules issues by agreement. So that's number 1. Number 2 is players should protect other players in the competition. And when unsure of how to proceed, in capitals and highlights as much as I can, play 2 balls. Announce which ball you think should count. Play out both balls. Bring the issue, even if you got the same score, to the committee. Get the ruling. And then instead of conflict and argument, just play 2 balls and ask later. Fegley, you're up, buddy.
So I was going to think of some ways to effectively implement this, but some of my guidelines aren't exactly perfect. But if you find yourself in this situation, one of the things to generally do is play the ball as it lies and as you find it, right? And then take your relief, or whatever situation you find yourself in. The other one is you can go back to the place where you previously played a shot and use that as one of your options if you're unsure. That was just kind of some context that I wanted to add to this. So any other thoughts? And the other important point that someone pointed out is take a picture of the situation.
Yes.
From angles that show whatever, you might think the situation entails. So and try to do a good job of you know setting the scope if you think that there's a situation that the ball is in a weird spot or something along those lines. So
Cool. Well, now we get into the fun parts, which is how to take relief. We've got the examples. We're going to get into penalty areas. We're going to get into stroke and distance. We're going to get into unplayable ball relief and what your options are. So these are the most common things you're going to need. So when we start the penalty areas, which is covered by Rule 17, penalty areas is actually one of the biggest definitions in the definitions. And so it's worth covering because defining the penalty areas will help talk about and help you identify them, because this has changed a lot in the most recent rules update. And so penalty areas, not hazards. They've changed a lot of things in this. So I just wanted to spend some time going through it. First is an area from which relief with a one-stroke penalty is allowed if the player's ball comes to rest there. So a penalty area is any body of water on the course, whether or not it's marked by the committee, including a sea, lake, pond, river, ditch, surface drainage ditch, or other open water course, even if not containing water, and any other part of the course the committee defines as a penalty area. So if you go to our rule sheet, that's when we talk about desert. I know Denny brought up a question earlier about the desert being defined as a penalty area. A lot of places, times the Midwest, will define native areas as a penalty area. Here's where the definition is to do that. And a penalty area, like we talked about in Rule 2, is one of the 5 defined areas of the course. And there are 2 different types of penalty areas distinguished by the color used to mark them. So there's yellow penalty areas marked with yellow lines or yellow stakes. Give the player 2 relief options. We'll cover that. And red penalty areas marked with red lines or red stakes. Give the player an extra lateral relief option in addition to the 2 relief options available for yellow. So the key point is to remember here, if it's yellow, you have fewer options than if it's red. And we're going to talk about that and look at a lot. And then it says if the color of a penalty area has not been marked or indicated by the committee, it is treated as a red penalty area. So if it's not marked, it's red. And then the edge of a penalty area extends both up above the ground and down below the ground. So there's a couple places where boundaries extend up and down. The example of that would be if there's a tree hanging over a pond that's in a penalty area and your ball gets stuck in the tree, your ball is treated to be as in the penalty area, even though it's 15 feet above the ground. And this means that all ground and anything else, such as natural or artificial object inside the edge, is part of the penalty area, whether on, above, or below the surface of the ground. If an object is both inside and outside the edge, such as a bridge over the penalty area or a tree rooted inside the edge with branches extending outside the edge, only the part of the object that is inside the edge is part of the penalty area. So I know that gets a little bit confusing, but you think if a penalty area is marked by lines, imagine an imaginary wall that extends vertically to infinity, and that's the margin of the penalty area. So if it's hanging outside of it, it's not in the penalty area. If it's inside it, it's inside it. And so the edge of and this is where it gets interesting, especially in a lot of our tournaments, because golf courses aren't marked properly a lot of times that we play them. The edge of penalty area should be defined by stakes, lines, or physical features. When it's defined by stakes, the edge of the penalty area is defined by the line between the outside points of the stakes at ground level, and the stakes are inside the penalty area. When it's defined by a painted line on the ground, the edge of the penalty area is the outside edge of the line, and the line itself is in the penalty area. And then physical features, when defined by physical features such as a beach or desert area or a retaining wall, the committee should say how the edge of the penalty area is defined, which we do in the rule sheet. So where it gets interesting, the edge of the penalty area is defined by lines or physical features. Stakes may be used to show where the penalty area is located. That's another key point here. You'll get to a lot of penalty areas courses that are marked well. You'll have stakes and lines to define. When there's stakes and lines, the line is the margin, and the stake defines that it's there. And so when stakes are used to define or show the edge of the penalty area, they are obstructions, meaning that if your ball is not in the penalty area and has interference from the stake, you are allowed to move a penalty area stake. Not an out of bounds stake, but a penalty area stake. So don't get confused by that. And then
just to be clear, you can move a penalty area stake in
in the penalty area too.
in any circumstance. A
Yes.
red or yellow stake can
Correct.
be moved.
Yes.
Not a white one.
I was just waiting for you to catch that when I said it. I was like, crap. So
It's
thank
okay.
you. If a committee has mistakenly excluded an area of water that is clearly part of the penalty area when defining its edge, such by placing stakes in a location that means there's a portion of water from the penalty area that appears to be in the general area, that area is still part of the penalty area. So if course is mismarked, use common sense. That's what that says. And then when the edge of a body or water is not defined by the committee, the edge is its natural boundaries where the ground slopes down to form the depression that can hold the water. That's another thing that's interesting. It's not the edge of the water. It's where the ground goes down to hold the water. So you're not dropping on the steep slope. It's the edge where it goes down. If it's not marked otherwise, that's the edge. And then if an open water course usually does not contain water, the committee may define that area as part of the general area, which means it is not a penalty area. I don't see an example where we'd probably ever use that, but it's there.
Right.
So that being said, let's talk through options for ball in the penalty area. Let's look at the definitions. This is one of the biggest and most confusing things that we see. So options for ball in a penalty area is 17-1. Penalty areas, like we said, they're defined red or yellow, and this affects their relief options. A player may stand in a penalty area to play a ball outside the penalty area, including after taking relief from the penalty area. So this is new. So even if you take relief from the penalty area, you can still stand in the penalty area to play your next shot. And then when ball is in penalty area, when any part of the ball lies or touches the ground or anything else inside the edge of the penalty area or is above the edge or any part of the penalty area, and if part of the ball is in both the penalty area and in another area of the course. So if any part of the ball is touching the penalty area, it's deemed to be in the penalty area. So there you go. Single source of truth on that. And the player may play the ball as it lies in a penalty area. This is a question we get a lot. Hey, my ball's in a penalty area, but it's sitting there. Can I play it? Absolutely. So the player may either play the ball as it lies without penalty under the same rules that apply to a ball in the general area, which means there are no special rules limiting how a ball may be played from a penalty area. This is a change for those that have played for 20 years. This means you can ground your club in a penalty area. That's all that means. So, but you can also play a ball from outside the penalty area by taking penalty relief under Rule 17.1, D or 17.2. And then there's an exception. Relief must be taken from interference by a no play zone in a penalty area. Like, for example, when we're at Macklemore next month, which, Nathan's on the call. Shout out to the Keep for getting voted best new golf course in America by Golf Digest. If your ball's in the penalty area that also happens to be the cliff, you cannot play it. You have to take relief because it's no play zone. So trying to avoid people falling off the cliffs this year. Relief for ball not found but in penalty area. And this is where it gets fun because there's also questions with people. If a player's ball has not been found and it is known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest in a penalty area, the player may take penalty relief under Rule 17. And once the player puts another ball in play to take relief in this way, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. This is true even if it is then found on the course before the end of the 3-minute search time. We had a big ruling about this a couple months ago. And other people had gotten it wrong in the past. There it is. It's right there for you. So once you take relief from a ball that you think is known or virtually certain to be in the penalty area, you've taken relief, you have the penalty, and that ball is now in play. Even if you walk up 30 yards and find your ball in the fairway, you've already taken relief. So But if it's not known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest in a penalty area and the ball is lost, the player must take stroke and distance relief under Rule 18.2. So this is where it becomes interesting in the definitions. We need to know what known or virtually certain actually means. So known or virtually certain, the standard for deciding what happened to a player's ball. For example, whether the ball came to rest in a penalty area, whether it moved, or what caused it to move. Known or virtually certain means more than just possible or probable. It means that either there is conclusive evidence that the event in question happened to the player's ball, such as when the player or other witnesses saw it happen, or although there is a very small degree of doubt, all reasonably available information shows that it is at least 95% likely that the event in question happened. So there is your standard. And all reasonably available information includes all information that the player knows and all other information they can get with reasonable effort and without unreasonable delay. So, and when searching for a ball, only information discovered within the 3-minute search time is considered when determining whether knowledge or virtual certainty exists. So, known or virtually certain is 95% certainty. So, if you have a creek that's 6 inches wide and out of bounds behind it, and you didn't see it go in, you probably need to find the ball in the creek to be able. Thankfully, there's not a lot of those examples. But known or virtually certain is 95% certainty. You don't have to see it. You don't have to find it. You just have to know that it really can't be anywhere else with 95% certainty. So that's the definition when looking at that. So relief for ball in the penalty area. If a player's ball is in a penalty area, including when it is known or virtually certain to be in a penalty area, even though not found, the player has these relief options, each for one penalty stroke. So the first is stroke and distance relief, which simply just means you play a ball from where you played your last shot. That's stroke and distance. And they play the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is back on the line relief. These are the 2 options for a yellow penalty area. Player may drop the original ball or another ball outside the penalty area, keeping the estimated point where the original ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area between the hole and the spot where the ball is dropped, with no limit as to how far back the ball may be dropped. The spot on the line where the ball first touches the ground when dropped creates a relief area that is 1 club length in any direction from that point, but with these limits. It must not be nearer the hole than the estimated point where the original ball last crossed the edge of the penalty area, and it may be in any area of the course except the same penalty area, but must be in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped. So that was a question that came up at Kiowa when taking relief. Can I drop in a bunker from a penalty area? The answer is yes, because it may be in any area of the golf course, except the same penalty area you are in taking relief. Fegley, you want to explain the diagram? Because I put the USGA diagram for you.
Sure. So this is for our lovely yellow penalty areas. So as we see here, spot 1 is where the golfer is. The white dotted line is their ball that went into the middle of the pond. The big X right there by the pond is the place where it crossed into the yellow penalty area. All right, there you go. Yeah. So 1
Yep, right there.
golf ball X.
The
So
golf ball
now,
ended here. It crossed
yes.
here.
So that is your key point. It's the point that the ball entered the penalty area.
Yep, and you go straight back as far
You go
as you want.
Yes. So again, this is that whole thing. You like a yardage, you like grass, whatever. You go back.
So a couple
Then,
key. Sorry, go
yeah,
ahead. Keep going.
No, it's okay. Then at that point, you're like, okay, that's my point. Now, and I'm going to just, this is where you need to take over because I think I know how to explain the new rule, but I'm going to leave it to you to talk about the relief area.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. I actually didn't know until the USGA. So couple things here for relief area when on back of line relief that's unique. First is the relief area isn't created until you drop a ball. So you drop a ball on the line. Now keep in mind the line is estimated. And so you're going back online. You've got your point here. Can you see my mouse, by the way, as I'm moving it?
I can, yes.
Okay,
I
perfect.
believe everybody should if I
And
can.
so the hole's here, the line's here. So I went back online and I can drop on this line at any point. And when I drop on that line, it creates a 1 club length relief area in any direction, provided that that point isn't closer than this X right here. So meaning when you drop in back of line relief and the ball rolls forward 8 inches, the ball's still in play. It's okay. Only in back of line relief is that the case. It's only in this scenario. The other thing that's random in this rule is if for some reason you drop a ball in back on line relief and it rolls more than a club length, causing you to have to redrop, you can pick a different point on that line to drop the second time.
Okay.
So that's your other random one for those that like to do the gotcha. Those are my 2 favorite gotchas from the USGA rules seminar.
And that changed in 25. Okay, that one changed in 23, and it's one that because we used to do, those of you that have been around, it was the half circle, and then you could drop anywhere within that.
Right.
Now it's you go back, that's your drop point. Drop the ball wherever it rolls, as long as it's within a club length, it's okay. Ball's in play, move on. So that's you. I knew it. I didn't want to do it, but you and I we explained it the exact same way. That is the different thing. So
the biggest thing is when you determine back on line relief, there's 2 points that matter. There's the spot where your ball last crossed the penalty area and the flag. And you draw a straight line going backwards, and that's the line you take relief. It's not this white line over here. It's the black line going back where you see relief area number 2. So your 2 options are there or to play from where you just hit.
Doing it over
So,
and over.
So let's add the red penalty area potential.
Overdosing.
And so 3, lateral relief only for red penalty area. When the ball last crossed the edge of a red penalty area, the player may drop the original ball or another ball in this lateral relief area. So the reference point is the estimated point where the original ball last crossed the edge of the red penalty area. The size of relief area measured from reference point is 2 club lengths, but with these limits, it must not be nearer the hole than the reference point. So that's different than back on line relief. And it may be in any area of the course except the same penalty area. But if more than one area of the course is located within 2 club lengths of the reference point, the ball must come to rest in the relief area in the same area of the course that the ball first touched when dropped. So if you've got 2 club lengths and you drop it in the general area and it rolls in a bunker, you've got to drop it again. If you drop it in a bunker and it rolls in the general area, you have to drop it again. It's got to stay in the same area of the course where the ball first touches the ground. So when we get here, this is another one that brings a lot of questions. So I want to jump good old definitions that bring clarity. This is why the definitions are important. Definitions of club length. Because you see a lot of people, they'll take their wedge and measure it twice. And somebody will be like, that's the club length. The length of the longest club of the 14 or fewer clubs that the player has during the round, other than a putter, which is almost always going to be your driver with very few exceptions. But a club length is a unit of measurement used in defining the player's teeing area on each hole and the size of a player's relief area when taking relief under the rule. So even if you measure it with your sand wedge twice, the relief area is actually the longest club in your bag that's not a putter. So just know that if you see somebody measure with their sand wedge twice and they drop it and it's 6 inches outside of that, it's still going to be a legal drop because it's within 2 club lengths of their longest club. So here's the diagram for the red Fegley, if you want to take over on this,
Yep.
once again, I'll illustrate as you drive.
Okay, so your player golfer one over here. You go in, your ball travels, goes across the red line
Right
and winds up in the
there.
middle of the pond.
Yep. Here's your point.
This is the thing that we see and hear a lot, so it's very, very critical. It's not the point where the ball is. It's not up in the corner here of the red of the water. It's this point that the arrow is at where the ball crossed. Okay. So now at this point, you take the same idea that we talked about before on the yellow line. So keeping that point between you and the ball, or you and the flag, keeping that point between you and the flag, you go backwards to point two. Okay.
Right. That's your back on line relief.
That's your back on line relief. Where it crossed the red is between the flag stick and where you're going to hit from. So that is number two. And again, it's the same relief area that we talked about. The spot that you drop the ball, it drops, it rolls a foot any direction, a club length, up to a club length any direction. It's fine. It's in play.
2 club lengths.
Well, number two.
Oh, number two. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, that's
I was
okay.
ahead of you.
Number two. Yep, that's okay. Now, that then completes the back on line relief that we covered in the yellow. The third option that you get with the red is you get 2 club lengths off of the spot that it last crossed. So again, as you can see the diagram, you got the black dot where the ball crossed. You get 2 club lengths no closer to the hole. So that's why you create this little pie piece that you get there, and you can drop anywhere in that area. That's your
Right.
third option. So that's what the red offers you, is that 2 club lengths relief. And again, to say it one more time, it's not where the ball winds up, it's where the ball crossed. That's the key reference point for your shot.
Correct.
And then as
So-
always, with any situation you have with the rules of golf, you can always go back to the place you last played a shot and
Play
play it
take
again.
stroke and distance.
And take
Correct.
your
So
stroke and distance.
this white dotted line is the flight of the golf ball. Just to review real quickly, ends up in the pond over here. The X is where that ball last crossed the margin of the penalty area. That becomes the reference point. Back on line relief, you take the flag and the X and go backwards as far as you want, and that's your back on line relief. The lateral relief option takes the point where the ball last crossed the margin of the penalty area, and then you get 2 club links no closer to the hole. And you can drop anywhere in the pink shaded area here in 3. So that's your third additional option. For time's sake, there is some more things in here. You'll get it in the when we send you the PDF of everything. There are some specific options for what happens if you decide to play a ball from a penalty area and then the ball stays in the penalty area. But I wanted to get to some questions so we can jump to Rule 18. So, Fegley, do you want to
So,
ask
we
some
had-
questions?
all right. So we had a couple to get caught up on. Okay, provisional ball usage for potential ball in a red penalty area where the ball's not found in the red penalty area.
Say that one more time.
All right. Talk about provisional ball usage for potential ball in red penalty area where the ball is not found in the red penalty area.
Gotcha.
So the local rule.
Yeah, so we have a local rule in effect in our tournaments. It's on our hard card, so it's in effect at every APT event that allows you to hit a provisional ball for a ball that may be lost in a penalty area to save time. So, for example, you think it's in a penalty area and like there's a drop zone that's farther away, or you think your ball might be farther up. You can say, hey, I'm going to hit a provisional ball for a ball that may be in a penalty area. You're going to hit that ball, and then you're going to go continue to look for your ball. So when you hit a provisional for a ball that's in a penalty area, there's 2 options. You either find your ball and play as it lies, or the ball you hit, you've already taken relief with. So there's that piece of it. And
Now
so
here's where it gets a little gray, and we want to be very specific. You see let's go to this diagram, and I'm going to go. You see the ball cross into the red. You see a splash. You've made the judgment, and you're virtually certain that that ball is in the lake, and you've taken relief under option 3.
right.
And you happen to drive your golf cart up to the far right part of the lake, and I'll be doggone if somehow the thing hopped out of the water and is in play. That is not how this rule works, because you made the assumption
Correct.
that you were virtually certain that the ball went into the pond. So you have taken relief from that. This is more of a situation for you hit it over a pond, there was weeds, you couldn't see, you weren't sure. The only way to validate that the ball is not in the pond
Right.
is to drive around and go look. You can then say, I'm playing a provisional to advance it.
Correct.
It's
So,
not, that's
but-
the key thing that
But
I
you
have
don't
seen
play
where
a provisional when you find it. You have to declare the provisional ahead of time. So
Correct.
we're going to cover this in a future as we go through the hard card. So I'm going to keep going. There's a couple
Okay.
questions. And the what if you cross and roll back in? So for example, if this white line is going this way and the ball lands up here, well, that didn't work. I was hoping I had a pen to make this work. Okay, a pen. So like it crosses here and then it kicks back into the water like that, right? So your ball hits where the X is and then it goes where the red dot is. This becomes your area. That now becomes this point now becomes here, and then you proceed under that rule. So back on line relief would look like this. This is really bad drawing. Going this way, and you could drop here, or you could take two club length relief under option 3 here. So option 2 and option 3. Does that make sense?
That makes
so
sense.
If the ball
to
crosses,
me.
it's the last point it crosses the penalty area. So if it hits on the other side and goes back, that's now the point where it crossed.
Yes.
It's where it last crossed the margin of the penalty area. Scott asked, can you take a drop in a penalty area if a ball is not found in the red penalty area? No. You cannot take a drop in a penalty area. If you take penalty relief, it can be on anywhere else in the golf course, including the fairway, which was Dan's question.
Yep.
If it gets within 2 club lengths or back on line relief, if that gets you into the fairway, that's it. You can drop the ball anywhere on the golf course except in the same penalty area. So,
Now-
like for example, in back on line relief, I can't drop it here in this example because that's in the same penalty area, and I can't drop it here, but I could drop it right here if I wanted to.
Right.
That makes sense.
Now, one thing that is good to understand is that when you're in a penalty area and you want to play the ball, essentially you get no breaks. If there's a
Correct.
sprinkler head,
Well,
if there's
we'll get to that in a second, Fegley.
okay,
I'm
all right,
just-
sorry,
So
just
Tony said only red stakes. If yellow rolls back, you need to go back. So here's the yellow diagram. The ball comes in. Here's his ball, and it goes here and rolls backwards. Okay, this becomes the ball. You still have 2 options. One, you can play the ball as it lies, or not play it as it lies, but you can go back here to where you hit it from. Back on line relief now just looks like this.
yeah,
So you're dropping over here.
Yeah,
which
I was
is
like, you put
why-
it in a weird.
I put it in a weird spot intentionally, which is
That was
why
a
a
good
lot
point.
of times you'll notice in yellow penalty areas, we will put a drop zone. And so will the tour when they do events. And that is why. So you don't have to go back. It just, this becomes the spot, and then the flag and the spot at last crossed and goes backwards.
The good
which is
rule of-
why you see a drop zone in all of those things. Most of the time.
correct. And the good rule of thumb for yellow stakes, if your ball ever winds up in a yellow penalty area, you're going to have to traverse the yellow penalty area when taking relief.
Right. Or head to
So-
the drop zone.
Go back to that, or take the drop zone. Go back to that diagram, right? Which is where you intentionally put it.
Yes.
If you see, if you're taking relief somewhere at the top end of your red line that you have drawn here, when you drop that ball, you're going to have to go back over a section of that water. That's the key that helps, that has always helped me differentiate between red and yellow. Is yellow, unless I'm using a drop zone, if I'm taking relief in a yellow, from a yellow penalty area, I'm going to have to go back over it.
Right. Well, we got to keep moving. We'll stay on
Yeah,
for
sorry.
questions at the end. Key points review on Rule 17, which is penalty areas. You have two options under yellow penalty area. Play from where you played your last shot, back on line relief. Red penalty area has three options. It's the same two as yellow, but it includes a lateral relief option within 2 club lengths, no close to the hole. If a penalty area is not marked, you know it's going to be red. You get no relief under the rules when ball is in penalty area for abnormal course conditions, embedded balls, and unplayable balls. And the few exceptions, which we did not cover, but they're in the notes you'll get. Rule 17 provides relief, no play zone. Free relief is only available in the penalty if you stay in the penalty area, or you have to take penalty relief if you pull it out. So there are a couple exceptions there, but we'll go through that. Rule 18, super fun. Stroke and distance relief, ball lost or out of bounds, provisional balls. These are good. So relief under this, Fegley, you've said this 14 times already tonight. Relief under penalty of stroke and distance allowed at any time. So the player always has this stroke and distance relief option, no matter where the player's ball is on the course. And even when a rule requires the player to take relief in a certain way or to play the ball from a certain place. So once the player puts another ball in play under penalty of stroke and distance, the original ball is no longer in play and must not be played. This is true even if the original ball is found on the course before the end of the 3-minute search time. But it does not apply to a ball to be played from where the previous stroke was made when the player announces that they're playing a provisional ball or they're playing a second ball in stroke play under either 14.7b or 20.1, which is the play 2 balls we've been talking about. And we'll talk about provisional balls here in a second. So ball lost or out of bounds, stroke and distance relief must be taken. And so this is one of those things. The USGA has a local rule that allows you to pull out to the fairway with a 2-shot penalty. We do not play that rule ever. It is always stroke and distance if you hit the ball out of bounds. So when ball is lost or out of bounds, when ball is lost, the ball is lost if it is not found in 3 minutes after the player or their caddy begins to search for it. If you've played any of our national events, you've heard Chris say it 100 times. That's his favorite line on the first tee. And so if a ball is found in that time but is uncertain whether it's the player's ball, the player must promptly attempt to identify the ball and is allowed a reasonable time to do so, even if that happens after the 3-minute search time has ended. This includes a reasonable time to get to the ball if the player is not where the ball is found, and if the player does not identify their ball in that reasonable time, the ball is lost. All that's saying is Fegley's helping me search for my ball. I'm 30 yards away. We have 5 seconds left to find the golf ball on the 3-minute clock. And he goes, hey, I found the ball. Cool. 3-minute search time stops. I can have time, even if it goes after, to find and identify my golf ball. So that's all that means. And then when ball is out of bounds. A ball at rest is out of bounds only when all of it is outside the boundary edge of the course. So good rule of thumb for knowing if a ball is in an area. If any of it is in, it is in. If all of it is out, it's out. So if any of the ball's in, if any part of the ball is touching the golf course, it's in bounds. If any of the ball is touching a penalty area, it's in the penalty area. So a ball is inbounds when any part of the ball lies or on or touches the ground or anything else, such as any natural or artificial object inside the boundary edge or is above the boundary edge or any other part of the course. A player, this is another one that we get questions about a lot. A player may stand out of bounds to play a ball on the course. So it's not whether you're standing there if it's inbounds, it's whether or not the ball is on the course. So here's a great diagram that shows you when it's stakes. It's defined by the inside edge of the stakes, a line. The line itself created is out of bounds. If any part of it is touching inside the line, the ball is considered inbounds. Over here, this is an out of bounds line. The line itself is out of bounds. If any part of the golf ball is in, it's inbounds. So if all of the ball is on the line and not any of it's touching the course, this ball is out of bounds. If any of it is inside the line, the ball is inbounds. So there you go. Can be confusing, but if any of it is in, it's in. That's the big rule.
It makes, thinking about that one, it makes sense, right? When is a ball out of bounds? It has to be off the premises of the golf course. If any part of the ball is still on the golf course, it's counted as it's on the golf course.
Right. So what to do when ball is lost or out of bounds? If ball is lost or out of bounds, the player must take stroke and distance relief by adding one penalty stroke and playing the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. An exception, the player may substitute another ball under other rule when it is known or virtually certain what happened to the ball. So instead of taking stroke and distance relief, player must substitute another ball as allowed under rule that applies when their ball has not been found and it is known or virtually certain that the ball, so here's your exceptions, came to rest on the course and was moved by an outside influence. That's a good definition to look up. Or played as a wrong ball by another player. That's never happened to us.
No.
Came to rest on the course in or on a movable obstruction or an abnormal course condition, is in a penalty area, meaning if you don't find your ball in a penalty area, you're allowed to take relief under a penalty area, or was deliberately deflected or stopped by any person, which under Rule 11. Then penalty for playing ball from wrong place in breach of this is general penalty. We'll go into that. Provisional balls. This is where it gets fun. When a provisional ball is allowed. If a ball might be lost outside a penalty area or be out of bounds, to save time, the player may play another ball provisionally under penalty of stroke and distance. This includes when the original ball has not been found and identified, it is not yet lost. A ball might be lost in a penalty area. This is another big change that a lot of people haven't caught on to yet, because it used to be you can't hit a provisional ball towards a penalty area. And this says a ball might be lost in a penalty area, but also might be lost somewhere else on the course. Or a ball might be lost in a penalty area, but might also be out of bounds. So if you're not sure if it's in a penalty area or not, the only time you can't hit a provisional ball is if you're sure the ball is in a penalty area under this rule. So if it might be, but it might not be, then you can hit a provisional. If a player makes a stroke from where the previous stroke was made with the intent of playing a provisional ball, but a provisional ball was not allowed, the ball played is the player's ball in play under penalty of stroke and distance. So if provisional ball itself might be lost outside a penalty area or be out of bounds, the player may play another provisional ball. This is when it goes really sideways. And that provisional ball then has the same relationship to the first provisional ball as the first one has to the original ball. So I slice one to the right and might out of bounds. Fegley goes, Matt, you might want to hit another one. I slice that one to the right. It might be out of bounds. I can hit a third provisional ball. The most I've ever seen is 5 provisional balls in tournament play. So go figure.
I've personally had 4.
Right. And then found the first ball in play, and you're like, thank God.
That's the greatest thing ever.
So here's the thing about provisional balls. Before the stroke is made, you must announce to someone that they are going to play a provisional ball. So it is not enough for the player to say they're going to play another ball or playing again. The player must use the word provisional or otherwise clearly indicate that they are playing the ball provisionally under Rule 18.3. If the player does not announce this, even if they intended to play a provisional ball and plays a ball from where the previous stroke was made, that ball is the player's ball in play under penalty of stroke and distance. And then there's always an exception, which drives me crazy. But if there's no one nearby to hear the player's announcement, the player may play the provisional ball and then inform someone of their actions when possible to do so. So the biggest thing to this is if you're going to play a provisional ball and you're unsure if it's out of bounds, always just say, I'm going to play a provisional ball. That's all you got to do.
Yes.
So there you go.
Yes, that's the biggest thing that everybody talks about. It's always a good habit to be in because the rules clearly state if you use the word provisional, you're safe.
Correct.
So I'll just develop the habit of, guys, I'm hitting a provisional.
I'm hitting a provisional.
Son.
Exactly. So playing provisional ball until it becomes the ball in play or is abandoned. So first is playing provisional ball more than once. The player may continue to play the provisional ball without losing its status as a provisional ball so long as it is played from a spot that is the same distance or farther from the hole than where the original ball is estimated to be. Estimated is the key word because if you find it afterwards, it's where you think it is. It's not where it actually is. That's the key. This is true even if the provisional ball is played several times, but it stops being a provisional ball when it becomes the ball in play or is abandoned and therefore becomes a wrong ball. Not a big deal. We'll go into that. And then provisional ball becomes ball in play under penalty of stroke and distance. In either of these two cases, one is when the original ball is lost anywhere in the course except in penalty area or is out of bounds. The original ball is no longer in play, even if it's found on the course after the end of the 3-minute search time. And when provisional ball is played from a spot near the hole, then where the original ball is estimated to be, not found, estimated to be. And then the original ball is no longer in play, even if it's found on the golf course. So if a player plays a provisional ball in the same general location as the original ball, this is another one, guys. Mark your golf balls and mark them uniquely. So if a player plays provisional in the same general location as the original ball and is unable to identify which ball is which, if only one of the balls is found on the course, that ball is treated as the provisional ball, which is now in play, which means you got a stroke and distance penalty. And if both balls are found on the course, the player must choose one of the balls to be treated as the provisional ball, which is now in play, and the other ball is treated as the original ball, which is no longer in play and must not be played. So if you can't identify between the two, you're getting the penalty for stroke and distance to protect the field.
It is, it's harsh, but again, these are why the rules state it clearly, announce it, and identify it.
And the rules are there to protect any advantage that you may get.
Right.
So here's a diagram the USGA did. Here's the original ball. This is where we think it is over in the trees. We're not sure if we can find it. We had a provisional ball to here. It's clearly farther from the hole. I can play this ball up to point B and then go look for my ball. However, if I play the ball from point B that's closer to the hole than where this is now my ball in play.
And that's clearly closer than the estimated position. Now, if you played, well, I guess it's okay either way. It's like, hey, I think it's over in the trees. I topped my provisional. I'm going to advance my provisional. Then I'm going to go over to the trees. That's the intent of advancing the provisional ball. So it's estimated. Anyhow,
that's funny. The USGA rules guy's texting me right now. Jay Roberts, that does the videos. He's trying to get in here. So
he's like,
we might have a celebrity here in a second.
He's like, no, you're saying it wrong. Oh, my bad.
I know. I'm gonna invite him in. This could be fun. So rule 18, here we go. Provisional ball. The exception is the player may substitute another ball under other rule when it is known or virtually certain what happened to the ball. So the player has an extra option when the ball has not been found. It is known or virtually certain that the ball came to rest on the course or was moved by an outside influence. We've talked about this. Came to rest on the course in immovable obstruction or abnormal course condition, was deliberately deflected or stopped by any person. And one of those rules applies. Player can substitute another ball. Treat the provisional ball as the ball in play under penalty of stroke and distance. So those are your options. I think we already covered that. Oh, there's a couple things here actually. One is a player may ask others not to search for the original ball when the player would prefer to continue play with the provisional ball, but there's no obligation for them to comply. So if the provisional ball has not become the ball in play and a ball is found that might be the original ball, the player must make all reasonable efforts to identify that ball. If the player fails to do so, the committee may disqualify the player if it decides that this was serious misconduct contrary to the spirit of the game. So kind of interesting there. Definitely be nice to your playing competitors because there certainly are times that you're going to hit a ball and hit a provisional and you may not want to find the original ball.
Now in match
You don't
play,
have to look for it and you can ask them not to search for it, but there's nothing saying that they can't continue to do so.
Now, I want to make sure I get this right. If you go to the provisional ball and hit that ball, it's over. So then they can find your ball for you after you've hit that.
If the provisional ball is closer to the hole, in theory.
Oh, God, it's a good point. I knew it. I was like, I'm not going to stretch that one here. So, but yeah,
we'll go to the review question.
Nice,
and there's a couple questions in here I want to hit.
Yeah.
So go ahead and read this one here.
Read? Oh, man.
I'll let you do it.
Okay, it's question time. Which one of the following is true regarding a provisional ball? A provisional ball may not be played if there is any possibility of the original ball being in a penalty area. Okay. A provisional ball becomes the ball in play if the original ball is known to be lost in a penalty area. After playing a provisional ball, if the player wishes to take unplayable ball relief with the original ball that was found in a bunker, the provisional ball may be used under the penalty of stroke and distance. If a player intends to play a provisional ball but does not announce this and plays a ball from where the previous stroke was made, that ball is the player's ball in play under the penalty of stroke and distance. Okay. We got 2 Ds, 3 Ds. Most people are answering D.
That's good.
It's good. Because I'm like, that's got to be the right one.
That is the correct answer. So very, very good. So we had a couple questions in here early.
Yeah.
So first one to answer from Daniel, this is back to Rule 17. If there is a drop zone, do you have to use the drop zone? The answer to that is no. The drop zone is just created an extra option for you to utilize in taking relief under Rule 17. And then I'll let you, can you comment on players at locals refusing to spot searching, violating the 3-minute limit?
Okay. Refusing
3
to
minutes.
Spot. Oh, he said he meant stop.
Yes.
That's what we have to all agree on and enforce. And that's it. I mean, we should have timers. I mean, I've not in extreme situations, but there are times when if I'm in a hairy situation where I know the ball is going to be very, very tough to find, I'll put the timer on my phone myself.
Right.
But again, that's another statement about protecting the field. I know going from 3 minutes to 5 minutes is controversial. I do understand that it is a very difficult penalty because it is substantial. But it's the rules we all got to live by, so we got to live by them.
Well, and the thing is just with especially how our golf courses are set up, with a lot of times the native being defined as a penalty area, if you can't find it in 3 minutes, you probably don't want to.
Yes. And that's where that then gives you that relief. You're taking, again, it's in tall grass. Tall grass in most situations is going to be in the rules and defined as a red. If you don't find it, it is a one you can use the red.
If you're in the native area that's defined as a penalty area, correct. But
if
it is not.
Defined.
it's not 3 minutes for each player. So there's a couple things on pace of play here.
Correct.
When the 3-minute timer starts, when the player has time to fairly get to the area where their ball might be lost, that's when the 3-minute timer starts. It's not 3 minutes for each player, it's 3 minutes for each ball. So one of the things we recommend for pace of play is if you have somebody looking for a ball to keep things moving, is if your ball's not lost, go and hit your ball and then go help the player search. But it's not 3 minutes for Matt's ball and then 3 minutes for Ed's ball and then an additional 3 minutes for Jason's ball and so on and so forth. It's 3 minutes total. So it's 3 minutes from when the player gets to the area to search for the ball. So it could be different for me and Matt based on when we get to the area where our ball may be lost, but it's 3 minutes from when we get to that area. And it's not because I stopped to go look for someone else's ball. My 3-minute timer doesn't start. I have to go to my ball and start looking.
Right. One other thing, we were talking about helping players, helping your competitors. Danny brought it up. Before player hits provisional ball but doesn't announce, playing competitor asks, is that a provisional? That's always a good thing when a guy goes to the, I've seen it, guy, and then rolls over to the cart and grabs a ball and puts it in the ground. Before he's hitting it, go, hey man, that's provisional? Yes, provisional, my bad.
Yes.
That's-
Always try to help the situation where you can.
Yep.
So cool. One more big rule to get through in 10 minutes. We got this. Unplayable ball. So 19-1. So player may decide to take unplayable ball relief anywhere except in a penalty area. In a penalty area, your relief from a penalty area is
This penalty
under
area
Rule
relief.
17. Correct. Unplayable anywhere else on the course, minus penalty area, you can take an unplayable relief. And a player is the only person who may decide to treat their ball as unplayable by taking penalty relief under 19-2 or 19-3. It's allowed anywhere in the course except in penalty area. And if a ball is unplayable in a penalty area, their only relief option to take is under Rule 17. So it's got a little small, so I apologize. Relief options for unplayable ball in a general area or on putting green. A player may take unplayable ball relief using one of the three options in 19-2, A, B, or C. In each case, adding one penalty stroke. Player can take stroke and distance relief under 19-2A, even if the original ball has not been found and identified, but to take back on the line relief under 19.2B or lateral relief under 19.2C, the player must know the spot of the original ball. So, stroke and distance relief is the player may play the original ball or another ball from where the previous stroke was made. We've been talking about this all the time. That's one of your three options in an unplayable. Back on line relief is essentially the same as a yellow penalty area. The player may drop the ball, original ball, or another ball behind the spot of the original ball, keeping the spot of the original ball between the hole and the spot where the ball is dropped, with no limit to how far back the ball may be dropped. The spot on the line where the ball first touches the ground when dropped creates a relief area that is one club length in any direction from that point, but with these limits. It can't be nearer the hole than the spot of the original ball. It can be in any area of the course, but it has to be in the same area of course that the ball first touched when dropped. So if you drop it into the general area in the fairway and then it goes into a bunker, you have to redrop it. That's what that means. And then relief options for the unplayable ball in general area on putting green. Lateral relief is the player may drop the original ball, another ball in this lateral relief area where the reference point is the spot of the original ball. But when the ball lies above the ground, such as in a tree, the reference point is a spot directly below the ball on the ground. And so you get two club lengths, but it must not be near the hole, then the reference point, and it may be in any area of the course. But same thing, if more than one area of the course is located within two club lengths of the reference point, the ball must come to rest in the relief area in the same area of the course the ball first touched when dropped. So penalty for doing this incorrectly is playing from a wrong place. You get the general penalty. So here is a diagram when you look at unplayable. So over here, it's again courtesy of the USGA. These diagrams are in the rule book to help you. So player hits their shot here. it ends up in these bushes. Obviously, I can't play it from the bushes. My options would be option 1 is stroke and distance relief, which is played from here. Option 2 is back on line relief, like we talked about. Here's the point where I'm taking it unplayable. I put the hole in that and the ball that is my point of relief, draw a line straight back, and I can drop anywhere I want on that line going back. That's back on line relief. And then the lateral relief option for unplayable is take where the ball is, and I get 2 club links in any direction, which most of this relief area in this diagram does not look very good. So back on line relief looks a little bit better, but 2 club links in any direction, no closer to the hole. Those are your 3 options. So relief options for unplayable ball in the bunker, which is interesting, which is you get all the normal relief options, which is 1 penalty stroke. So when the ball's in the bunker, the player may take unplayable ball relief under any of the options in Rule 19.2, except that the ball must be dropped and come to rest in the bunker if the player takes either back on line relief or lateral relief. You get 1 if you keep it in the bunker and use the 3 options that we just outlined. But you should know in a bunker, there is an extra relief option available for 2 penalty strokes instead of 1 that allows you to take back on line relief outside of the bunker. So that's what that looks like. Same diagram. The ball gets stuck and plugged here. You have your back on line relief going this way to 2. You've got your 2 club length relief while still being in the bunker here and 3. And then for 2 penalty strokes, you can take back on line relief and go outside of the bunker. So that is also there and available to you. So Fegley, you're up for the review question.
All right. In which one of the following has the player not taking unplayable ball relief correctly for a 1 penalty stroke? The original ball is at rest in a tree limb directly over the side of the putting green. The player drops a ball on the putting green within 2 club lengths of the spot that was directly below the ball in the tree and not near the hole. The player puts the ball from the player puts the ball from 3 feet away on the putting green, but misses the hole and it rolls down a slope coming to rest in the fairway 40 yards from the hole. The player declares the ball unplayable and places it back on the original spot 3 feet from the hole. The original ball is in a poor lie in deep rough, and the player takes back on the line relief and drops a ball on the line in a dry red penalty area. The original ball is buried in sand in a bunker. The player drops a ball outside of the bunker within 2 club lengths of the original ball and no nearer the hole. Okay.
Okay, let's see the votes coming in.
Wow, I'm torn on this one.
Oh yeah, I haven't shown you
for
the answer to
1
this.
penalty stroke.
Keep them coming in. I see several correct answers now. So we'll jump in.
This is a tough one.
It is. I gave some of the harder questions. So
Because I can see.
don't feel bad if you guys get stumped by this, because I was just in a USGA rules class with people that do this for a living, and people would answer these questions wrong. So, but we'll talk through and why. So let the answers come in real quick. The correct answer, though, is D.
Okay.
And here's why. Is the original ball is buried in sand in a bunker. The player drops the ball outside of the bunker within 2 club lengths. So outside of the bunker relief for an unplayable ball is only back on line relief. It's not 2 club lengths. That's why that's why it's incorrect. All the other ones are true.
I was torn between C and D, but then D, I was like, well, if you're taking relief outside of the bunker, it's only back online and it is 2 shots. So that's why that one's never gonna be the right answer, even though they both took the relief wrong. And it's
So the
not
original
for
ball
1
is a
stroke.
poor line deep rough. The player takes back on the line, who drops on the ball on the line in a dry red penalty area. You can take an unplayable and drop a ball in a penalty area.
Okay.
So there's your trick. You can't take relief from a penalty area in the same penalty area, but it says you can drop the ball for an unplayable. You can drop the ball anywhere on the course, which anywhere on the course would include the penalty areas are one of the 5 defined areas of the course.
Right.
So it is a little bit of a trick question. I will give you that. So last rule to cover before we get to questions on this, and then we'll stay for as long. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm going to zoom through this one. This is rule 21. I said for APT is formerly known as triple bogey max for divisions 3 through 5. For those that have heard that us playing triple bogey max isn't in the rules of golf, it actually is in the rules of golf. It's rule 21.2 maximum score. So I wanted to cover this real quick for guys that are in D3 through 5 or that play in our net contest, because maximum score applies for both of those as well. So maximum score is a form of stroke play where a player's or side score for a hole is capped at a maximum number of strokes set by the committee, such as 2 times par, a fixed number, or net double bogey. Ours is defined as triple bogey. The rules for stroke play in rules 1 through 20 apply as modified by these specific rules. So rule 21.2 is written for scratch competitions, but can be adapted for handicap competitions as well. We have both going on in individual play, but can also be adapted for competition involving partners, with foursomes, 4-ball, team competitions, and so on and so forth. So scoring and maximum score, player score in a hole. Player score for a hole is based on the player's number of strokes, including strokes made and penalty strokes, except that the player will only get the maximum score even if the actual score exceeds the maximum. A player who does not hole out under the rules for any reason gets the maximum score for the hole. To help pace of play, players are encouraged to stop playing a hole when their scores reach the maximum. The hole is completed when the player holes out. Chooses not to do so. That's the Joe Smolera sit in the cart, say, give me a triple, or when their score has reached the maximum. So the score entered for each hole to meet the requirements of Rule 3.3b for entering the holes. If the hole is completed by holing out, when score is lower than the maximum, the scorecard must show the actual score. When the score is same as or higher than the maximum, the scorecard must show either no score or any score at or above the maximum. So the hole is completed without holing out. The player does not hole out under the rules. The scorecard must show either no score or score above the maximum, and the committee is responsible for adjusting the player's score to the maximum for any hole where the scorecard shows either no score. So one of the things you guys can feel good about our contests, when you do it, if you make that mistake and it's more than triple bogey, our system will adjust it automatically. So nothing to really worry about there. But here's where maximum score is really beneficial as we learn the rules and as we learn to apply them. Is penalties in maximum score. All penalties that apply in stroke play apply in maximum score, except that a player who breaches any of these 5 rules is not disqualified, but gets the maximum score for the hole where the breach happened. So first one, obvious, failure to hole out under Rule 3.3. Failure to correct mistake of playing from outside the teeing area and starting a hole. Failure to correct a mistake of playing a wrong ball. Failure to correct a mistake of playing from a wrong place when there is a serious breach. We'll get to that in another rules deal. And or failure to correct mistake of making a stroke in the wrong order. That's in team competition. But if a player breaches any other rule with a penalty of disqualification, the player is disqualified. But after applying any penalty strokes, the player's score for a hole cannot exceed the maximum score set by the committee. And then the exception, and if player's ball in motion needs to be holed to score 1 lower than the maximum score on the hole, and any person deliberately deflects or stops the ball when there's no reasonable chance it can be holed, there's no penalty to that person. The player gets the maximum score. And the round ends when they either hole out on their final hole or chooses not to hole out on the final hole or already get the maximum score on the hole. So there's your exceptions. The long and short of it is it's really a great safety net for those that are continuing to learn the game and the rules. We put it in place, and so some of the penalties that can lead to disqualification and inexperience just lead to, hey, you got a triple bogey on the hole, and we move on and we learn from it. And it gives us the ability to kind of continue to learn the game in a positive way. So, Fegley, final thoughts. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We will be here to answer questions as long as you would like us to. But what are your thoughts, buddy?
Well, just thanks for everybody. The maximum score one got me going in, like, I was like, whoa, I got glassy eyed there. But you know, it's just an important thing. I do appreciate the fact you had the rules down there about, where it applies. But yeah, man, other than that, thanks for everybody. I know it was long. We were going fast, but that's why it's recorded and we can replay it. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions as discussions get done. So, might be on a live or something, or we'll start to just have some videos and stuff talking about some of the situations that people
Right.
are wondering about. So,
Cool. So I guess we'll put our cameras on and we'll just open it up for questions.
do, 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 do.
Oh, here's a question from Dan. When a ball comes to rest on the fringe of the green and you plan to putt, can you repair divots, remove stones, dirt, sand, leaves on the green and or the fringe in your line?
There's two pieces to that in my first judgment. I might be wrong, but you can fix the stuff on the green. You can't fix the stuff on the fringe.
Correct.
Now, that's the ball mark piece. So let's go through this because there's a lot. You can repair things on the green.
You can
You
repair things
cannot
on the
repair
green.
things
You cannot
on the
repair
fringe.
divots. Correct.
Right.
And keep in mind, as far as the rules are concerned, and as you're reading the rules, the fringe is considered part of the general area.
General area.
And so, like, when we go back to rule 2, which is at the very beginning of this whole thing, keep in mind, like, once again, this is the baseline why it's important. So I'm going to put up that chart real quick so
That's a
everybody
good
can
point.
see. You could do more things on the putting green than you can
And you
do
can in the general
than
area.
you can in the general area. So in the general area, we're fixing divots would be part of rule 8 and conditions affecting the stroke. But on the green, you're allowed to do certain items under 8.1 that you're not allowed to do not on the putting green. So that would be the
So
short.
stones would be a loose impediment, so you can move them in either place.
Correct.
Dirt and sand start to get
Sand on putting green and loose dirt, we're going to assume is loose soil.
right.
Which once again, if you pull up your rule book, which I'm going to pull it up,
This is why I was like, there's a
because this
lot
is why
there.
you know the definitions and you go to loose impediments. My teacher's on the call, so I don't want to screw this up. So loose impediment is any unattached natural objects such as stones, loose grass, leaves, branches, and sticks, dead animals and animal waste, worms, insects, and similar animals that can be removed easily, clumps of compacted soil, including aeration plugs. Such natural objects are not loose. They're attached or growing solidly embedded in the ground or sticking to the ball. Special cases, sand and loose soil are not loose impediments. Dew, frost, and water are not loose impediments. So you could not remove them, not on the green, but on the putting green, you're going to be able to remove sand and loose soil.
That's
There's
why
the answer to your question.
That's why I started going through that. I was like, well, there's a yes, no, no, yes situation on that. So
Correct.
okay, so to go through it, okay, green, you can repair things if on the green. You can remove stuff on the green, stones, dirt, sand, leaves on the green. Now, the fringe is where it then changes. You can no longer repair damage on the fringe. You can remove stones because stones are a loose impediment. Dirt and sand, not a loose impediment, so you can't touch those on the fringe. A leaf would be a loose impediment, so you could touch it on the fringe. So,
yes,
what we see players do is you take your towel out and use it to get the sand out of the way. You can do that on the green. You can't do that on the fringe. That's the big difference there. So just be careful about that.
Right. So one other thing, just jumping in, Jim Bauer asked, what about anthills? Anthills are a loose impediment, so you could move them in both places.
You can move the anthills would be a loose impediment and not a animal. It wouldn't be a burrowing.
No. In fact, the definition of loose impediment specifically says anthills.
Okay, got it.
So I looked it up because I saw that. I was like, gosh dang it, I'm going to get in. These are all the questions you get tricked on in like the advanced test. So I'm like, I'm going to look it up so I don't mess this up. The next question I'm going to jump back to the relief from cart path because we may do the next rules thing we do, we'll talk about free relief. But Mike asking, lift clean in place, is fringe considered fairway? So sometimes we're working through terminology. So lift, clean, in place when we put it in is going to be preferred lies. And so preferred lies will have very clear when it's in play, very clear definitions. And the definition of preferred lies is in fairway height or less
Yes.
in the general area. So, which would include fringe, yes.
And that's the biggest thing is when we did a thorough review of the hard card and everything and how we were talking
Correct.
about situations where we put ball in hand, you've got to be careful because there is a situation you can play lift, clean, in place, but you can also play preferred lies. The situation that we play is preferred lies, which has the different. So again,
Yes.
this is going to be one of those things like penalty area versus
Correct.
hazard. Start to train your mind to talk about we're playing preferred lies, not lift, clean, in place. We're playing preferred lies, not lift, clean, in place.
So, so a couple things. I'm going to hit from Mike real quick. In the fringe, can you repair your own pitch mark? No, you cannot. You can repair
Correct.
pitch marks on the green. You cannot repair pitch marks in the in the general
In the
area.
general area.
And that goes back to why we covered Rule 8.1 and CATS, conditions affecting the stroke, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. So I highly recommend going back to that piece. We'll send you guys this, but that's where it is. Matt said, can we review integral objects? So I'm good with that. So I want to give you the definition of an integral object, and then I want to read what's in our hard card, if that's okay, Fegley. So
Yeah.
An integral object is an artificial object defined by the committee as part of the challenge of playing the course from which free relief is not allowed. So integral objects are treated as immovable. But if part of an integral object, such as this is one of my favorite rules, drives me nuts. If part of an integral object is a gate or door or part of an attached cable meets the definition of a movable obstruction, that part is treated as a movable obstruction. And then artificial objects defined by the committee as integral objects are not obstructions or boundary objects, which are two different defined terms you can look at. On our hard card, here's what we say about integral parts of the course. It says includes cables, rods, wires, or wrappings when closely attached to trees unless otherwise provided for in the notice of competitors. Bulkheads, retaining walls, rock walls are integral parts of the course, and players are not entitled to free relief from these areas.
Okay.
So there you go. Nathan asked a question that we're not gonna go down that rabbit hole tonight. Sorry, Nathan. Jim wanted to come to take relief from a cart path and a sprinkler head. We are going to cover that in future rules. Sprinkler head's probably the easiest. So sprinkler head would be an immovable obstruction by definition, which is just going through all of it, which is also part of the definition of.
Well, here, this is why, because Mel's like sprinkler control boxes. This is why all of this stuff will be defined as whether it's a immovable or movable obstruction. That's where all of this stuff falls under too. So,
Right.
so a sprinkler head and a sprinkler control box are both immovable
obstructions, which is an abnormal course condition, which allows you to take free relief,
Mm-hmm.
which you're going to get your nearest point of relief, of complete relief, and no closer to the hole, one club length, and that is for stance and swing.
Mm-hmm.
Removable obstruction, not
Now,
line of play.
You nailed it. That's one thing that people do get.
But we'll cover that, and if you want to read about that,
oh, there you go.
it's Rule 16.
Yes,
which is all about relief. So Rule 15, so 17 through 19 are, which we cover tonight, are penalty relief.
Mm-hmm.
15 and 16, which we'll cover in our next session of this, cover free relief. So the next session of this, if you want to get more in depth with it, we'll cover specific rules for the bunkers, the putting green. We'll do ball at rest. We'll do ball in motion. We'll do, um, marking, lifting the ball, and then free relief.
And then Jeff, sprinkler heads near the green between your ball and the hole, that will be covered in our hard card because that is a model.
It's a
That's
model local rule.
It's a model, model local rule. So that's where that'll get covered.
Yeah, and it is on there. It is model local rule. I'm working towards it. I'm trying to find
Man.
it here. We added a bunch. Oh, maybe it's on there. Yeah, it's immovable obstructions close to putting greens. Model local rule F5
F5
is in effect. And it's word for word in model local rule F5 if you want to look it up. Paul, there is no Paul, there is no
oh my god.
there's no dangerous driving range condition in the rule. So Matt is asking a good question. Hard card is also it's interchanged with conditions of competition. So every time you get your rule sheet for the day, you'll have the local rules for the day on one side, which will have your tee assignments, if we're playing preferred lies or not,
What tee boxes?
all that good stuff, where the drop zones are. And then on the back side is the conditions of competition, which are the local rules that we have in effect for every event, also known as the hard card.
So, that's yeah. The back of it is the hard card because that is going to be the quote unquote local rules that are in play everywhere on tour, no matter what, as a part of the Amateur Players Tour organization. These are the local rules that we use. So those are common. That's why it's the hard card, because it's the solid stuff. And then everything on the front is going to be day of type items. So
First of all, I love the exceptions that are coming in. Like, people are blowing up my phone right now in text messages.
oh, they're not throwing it on the chat. Come on.
So I will give the exception about the pitch mark that's not on the putting green, because once again, we're getting into the exceptions. This is once again going to be in our next section of doing this.
What's the pitch mark? What's the exception here?
If the pitch mark wasn't there when your ball came to rest,
and
it's in your line of play, you can restore once again the once in a.
What? Okay, yeah, that is if the pitch mark was there. If the pitch mark was okay, so your ball comes to rest, somebody throws one right at your ball and goes splat right next to you.
Correct.
Then you can fix it. Okay, so yes, there is the one exception. That is fair. So damn it, because you get to restore the. Yeah, oh boy.
Yeah, and it's under. We didn't cover it. I'd have to find exactly where that is. It's Rule 8. No, it's not. I'd have to find it, but I do know that that's the case. So
yeah, no, that was a good one, because as soon as you started saying it, as soon as you specifically said, if the mark happens after your ball comes at rest, I was like, oh yeah, there's the exception.
Because you're entitled to the same conditions
as you, yeah. Mm-hmm. But again, that's the exception. It's the exception. Most times, again, remember everybody, one of the first definitions we talked about is the course as you find it.
Correct. So I think the biggest thing taken away from today is understand the diagrams for relief.
Yep.
Understanding the 5 areas of the course. These are all foundational principles. Understanding the role of the definitions and reading the rules. Knowing that the definitions are in italics. I think that's really important. Knowing the area of the course, because that determines what you're doing. Understanding Rule 8, what you can do affecting the stroke, what you can't do. That's important in applying all the other rules, and then understanding the pieces or the ways to take relief and how that works. So those are kind of the 4 major things. We'll do another one of these. We'll dive deeper into some of the other rules. There are some fun ones. Rule 9's fun. Rule 11's fun. The free relief. There's a lot of other things we didn't get to tonight. Obviously, when I did the USGA class, I will tell you we did all 25 rules in about 27 hours of classroom before the test. So we try to do 8 in 2 hours. So I know it's a lot to jump in, but just know you can always ask us questions. We're happy to, if we don't know the answer, we'll get the answer. But like we said, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We will get this recording up on our YouTube channel, and we'll send you guys the presentation so you guys have it. Although I will tell you, all of this is in your rule book. We really just pulled it out of there so you could see it, and then we could kind of talk through all of it. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you guys Thursday on the live. So have a good one.